So we're live now and a few people already coming in. Hello. Hello, all of you. I hope you also had a few relaxing days now in December and got to start freshly into the new year. Hello to the people who are joining. Great to see that so many are motivated in mid-January to learn more. Cool. So, hello all of you and welcome to today's App Talks session. I'm very excited about today's topic, especially since new year, new learnings, because we're talking about Google Play policy changes and how we can improve our 2022 ASO game. Talking about ASO game in 2020, I have a poll I would like to start. It would be awesome if you could join in. I would be curious to hear who of you has already made some changes since the Google Play new policies were introduced. While we wait for the poll to finish up, let's say that, 2022 New Year's resolution. So personally, I'm trying to be a bit more healthy and coming by bike to the office. That works quite okay-ish because in Austria, where we are based, it's quite easy to move around by bike. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Awesome that so many of you are already joining in the poll, and hello to everyone who just joined. Please be so kind and join in the poll just to see who is already doing some ASO updates since Google Play introduced some changes. I'd be very curious to hear more about your experiences shortly. So far, we have 60% that did not start doing any ASO changes yet since Google Play introduced some changes. That's very cool. So we hope to give you some new insights then today. But 40% is already doing some, so good job. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, let's wait maybe 1 minute more before we can fully get started. Maybe some more people want to join in the poll that I just pulled up, and then we can get started. Okay, I think it's not gonna get much more people who are joining in the poll. Then awesome. Okay, so 63% are not optimized yet for Google Play changes. That's the final poll result. I can show it to you if you're interested. And yeah, so what are we gonna talk about today? We want to see what crucial changes were introduced, how we can adapt our ASO strategy accordingly, and most importantly, how we can optimize with the fewer characters that we have now for our metadata. So let me introduce myself real quick. I'm Rebecca. I'm a customer success manager here at AppRadar, and today I'm with my lovely co-host Elena. You might have gotten some emails from her, at least some of you, and yeah, maybe introduce yourself shortly, please.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Rebecca, and thanks for the nice intro. I'm Elena, working here at AppRadar as app marketing expert. Always up to what is happening in the stores, of course, up to seeing top new market trends. And that's nice that you're joining today, because this is like one of the latest changes that were introduced end of last year. So super excited to discuss today about Google Play policy changes and about the whole topic and how you can adapt. All right, then let's dive into the topic, I would say. And first, so that we are all on the same page, let me quickly sum up what were the main changes in a nutshell. So yeah, first of all, the title reduction, I think that's a big one. So beforehand, we always had our 50 characters in the Google Play Store for the title. Now, all of a sudden, we have 20 characters less. So there is a maximum of 30 characters that you can use in the most important field when it comes to App Store optimization. And what is super important here to mention is when you look at the timeline that we have here on the right side of the slide, we see that initially, first time when you heard about those changes, it was end of April. It was announced that there are coming changes in the next half a year, and people can prepare, app marketers out there. It was building a bit of a buzz around in the industry. Then it was announced to go live with end of September officially. So kind of the official rollout of the new policies. But what we noticed back then, there was at that date, at least, no hard cut. What do I mean by hard cut is basically you could at that date still change in your console or in your store listing the title with 50 characters. Depending, different penalizations and so on, but there was still the possibility. Now, as of 15th of December, and this is super important note, you cannot change anymore anything in your store listing. So let's say you want to change your screenshots, you need to be compliant across all locals with the 30 characters. So it's a hard cut as of mid-December. The other, that's on the one hand for keyword optimization. The other thing that was implemented is around keywords when it comes to promoting or pushing store performance, like different keywords that I will show you afterwards across your store listing. So it means in the icon, in the title, in the short description, and also in the developer name. And last but not least, so they really want to make the Google Play Store as, I would say, clean as possible and avoiding any kind of spammy apps. That's why they also try to, refuse any keywords, any graphical elements, I wanted to say, that might be misleading for the user. All right, I mean, here, I really like it as an overview to make it more clear what we're talking about. And here you can nicely see it. On the one hand, I spoke about forbidden keywords, certain forbidden keywords that indicate somehow store performance. What I meant by that was actually what you can see here is terms such as, like best game or the top one or the #1 app in the store, everything that goes into the direction of store performance, same as everything that goes into promotional things, such as you might have used beforehand free in your metadata, or you might have had no ads because that can be a big benefit for users, but you might have used it to convince them in your metadata. Or sale, anything around that. And then we have the other thing around call to actions. And yes, beforehand, right? I mean, we've played around a lot with, we in marketing, we love call to actions, right? It does not need always to be that obvious as it is here, but the most common example here, just to give you one, is download now, not allowed anymore. So make sure to not have that included. And last but not least is, as said, to make it as clear and to the point as possible and really show the value to the users. They are not allowing anymore, for example, any capital letters. So as we have here the planner example, or any like punctuation marks, and also no emojis anymore, at least not in those fields, which means also do not use that anymore. What some apps had beforehand a lot, like including it for conversion rate purposes in the metadata.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a question here, but before that, two things I wanted to say. First of all, to everyone who's watching, stay tuned. We have a cheat sheet for you at the end. And if you have questions, please leave them in the FAQ section, Q&A section, sorry, so that we can look into them at the end. And okay, to my question, what does this now mean for ASO? This is very theoretical. Is there anything, do you have some examples?
Yeah, very good question. And basically, so we had talked about title reduction. What does it mean from ASO perspective? It will have an impact on keyword rankings. I want to highlight here, yes, we are reducing 20 characters from the app title, which means I have less character space, less valuable character space. At the one hand, what I also have to highlight, everyone will be, is impacted. So it's not like, how can I say, the whole industry will adapt. So it will also be not that you will drop and never get back. So the assumption here is also that it will by time also coming back again to the normal state at least. Then that's the one on the one hand from metadata perspective, keyword rankings, because you have less characters. The other point is then, I mean, we talked about certain keywords that are forbidden, and that was like, for example, beforehand, you would have liked to include free for conversion rate purposes, because everything like kind of trying to guide the user in a direction to download or download now, right? So the call to actions also not anymore. So everything here on a conversion rate level. And then, yeah, last but not least, visibility, which will be on the one hand impacted by both of those factors that I just mentioned. But also, if you are, there are still apps out there that are not compliant, right? And that will have, depending on which facts you are not compliant with, but it will clearly have an impact on your visibility. What do I mean by that is, for example, even in the Google Play console, Google states it clearly, for example, if you use certain words in your short description, that you are less likely to get featured. And everything kind of promotion that you would get from the store, I mean, be friend with them, right? They are giving you kind of free promotions if you behave, I would call it. But you're also less likely to get featured, to get into category rankings and so on.
Do you have some examples for us so that we can get a better feeling here?
Yep, I prepared here something, and on the one hand, I want to show you quickly an example of a so-called early adapter who changed my poster release in that case as an example that I looked up in Apparator's app timeline, and I can see very nicely which changes were implemented on what date and in which local. You can check that out for yourself, for your own app, but also for all competitors to get an idea. Here in that case, they removed from the app name the keyword photos and drucken, so print photos in its place, which is for them a very important keyword. What we can also see at the same time when we look at the description, and I mean, I could view now the full description, but when checking it, went obvious that they included a few times more the keyword photos. So their strategy was to be compliant before the official rollout. And as we can see here now, when we dive into, at least on a keyword rankings level for now, I had a look at those two keywords that I mentioned before that were removed from the app title. How did they evolve ever since then? So they did the title adaptation here, as you can see in the slide. Then after that, yes, they dropped. So especially for the keyword photos, they saw a kind of, I would say, more significant drop on that. But as of the policy rollout, they were again coming back into the game. Even if we look at it on a broader scope, so I could also extend the time frame in Apparator in the ranking section in the graph then. What is really nice here to see is that they had an even higher rank after the policy was rolled out. Okay, now a lot of talking. What do I mean by that? The hypothesis behind is that Google liked them being an early adopter, being compliant with their guidelines on time. And the assumption behind is that helped them also to get back on track on an even higher level because they kind of, did what Google wanted.
And let's say I missed my chance in December. What could I expect here now?
Yeah, I mean, I have here then another example. So we have, that's an app that is still live with 50 characters. And what I have a hypothesis behind is that, I mean, first of all, we will anyway see how will Google evolve with that. It might be that at some point, right now at the moment, you're getting warnings, you cannot do any changes anymore, means you, sooner or later anyways need to change it. It might also be at some point that you get removed completely because you neglect the guidelines or the title length. But in that case, they are with the 50 characters live, and everything that goes, I had a look now at the keyword, what does exceed the 30 characters. So after the 30 characters is written the pregnancy tracker and the bump log. It's basically one of the main functionalities of the app. And here there is for me, the hypothesis kind of clear that there was a clear penalization from Google side. Because what we can see, yes, there was the policy rollout. We see some fluctuations in rankings, some, I would say, rather fluctuations, yes. But once the 30 characters were now a must, we see a few days later a clear drop, and then they started to rank completely. So really, my thinking here behind is that this was Google saying, okay, you're not compliant yet. You get penalized and lose or drop on important keyword rankings.
Okay, so I have a few questions now with all of this information that I got from you. This week I had a client that we were discussing that since we cannot use words like free, you know, what happens if I want to add that into my long description? Since the long description seems to be kind of a gray zone at the moment, what would be your recommendation there?
Yeah, a very good question. I mean, first of all, I would really try to avoid it and try to be compliant and do not use it across the whole metadata fields. Means not in your title, short description, and long description. Really trying to be compliant here. It's a bit of a gray zone because I mean, I have to mention, I've seen examples where they got a clear warning that they need to change it, even though they had it, I'd say, only included in the long description. So I would rather play it safe and try to be really compliant here. If you want to, right? If you want to test it, then test it within a small amount, like include it 2 or 3 times. But my clear recommendation is try to be compliant and rather focus on what you're doing great. And here, look at really like the first paragraph, include like your main value proposition and focus on really your great features.
Okay. You mentioned before that we have, of course, no less characters in the title, right? And that I should repeat my keywords. How does this look? How often should I repeat my keywords in the long description since I lost them in the title?
Yeah, what the example that I showed before, what they did is they basically removed it from the title and, as you said, repeated it again in the long description. Here, the idea behind is to increase the density across all the metadata fields so that in total you show again that you are relevant for that keyword. What I would recommend here is take it small in small steps. So not go crazy and edit like now, I don't know, like 10 times, because that will most probably end up in the so-called keyword stuffing and you get anyways again penalized, but rather see it in a step-by-step strategy that you edit like, I'd say 2 to 3 times per iteration and like try it in small steps and see how it evolves.
Okay, so another question that I have is how can I keep my conversion rate as high as possible since I'm not allowed to use any calls to actions anymore? Do you have any tips there?
Yeah. Also great question. I mean, conversion rate is a super important topic and as said, gets influenced here. So my recommendation would be on the one hand, I mean, try to make you have still in the short description 80 characters. Focus on including important keywords, of course, but at the same time, even though you don't have a call to action, include your main features in a nice written way, right? So, I mean, right, you can still look at it from that perspective. And what I would also, when we talk about metadata, I mean, the long description, most of the people, they don't read. But what I would focus on, if I look at conversion rate, I would focus on the first paragraph, meaning the one part before you click on view more, before people need to do any further step. Really try to make that on a conversion rate level nicely to write, nicely written, I wanted to say, and try to really improve your value proposition in that sense and convince about all the awesome functionalities that you have. And then, yeah, that's the one part. But what is, when talking about conversion rate optimization, one of the major things that you can work on is really your creatives. So really A/B testing your screenshots, trying it out with a preview video and everything in that direction, or improving also, I mean, other important factors here, the amount of ratings and which star rating you achieve from working on that.
So does this mean that I can just optimize for my primary language, because it is kind of an effort to work over all the languages? Do you have any knowledge here?
Yeah, that's actually a question that I was asked frequently also by a client. And here comes the tricky part. There is no question around it, because you cannot only optimize at the moment one single language, be it your primary language or whatever local. You really need to be compliant, at least when we talk now about the app title length, right? When we talk about the reduction from characters, that you need to have the 30 characters across all locals. What is happening if you don't do it? Let's say you are, I don't know, the Italian local manager, and you want to change, you are like on top of the game and you want to be compliant from the very first, like after our call now, you're going to optimize it. But that will not work, because you can only do the changes if you are compliant across all other locals as well. Means you really need to communicate it to all stakeholders, and here really communication is key, and everyone needs to be compliant across all locals.
Okay, so I have one last question. So how does my process now look like when I want to do a new metadata update?
So yeah, I mean, I do have here in a quick overview. I don't want to go into too much detail, but as we do have less characters now, I'm referring back to the so-called metadata update loop that I have here on the slide. Start again with research. So re-evaluate your current target keyword set and see which keyword are you most likely able to respect a kind of smaller drop or bigger, whatever. But really re-evaluate it and make sure to prioritize your keywords then. And as mentioned, target them, trying to repeat them across different keyword fields, try to increase it, the amount in, for example, the long description. And then once you have prioritized it and targeted them, the most important part comes then, analyze and further optimize. And as I said before, do it like step by step in smaller iterations. And with every iteration, you will take some new learnings that you will include then in your next metadata update. Just important, always see it like in a loop, because it's really a continuous process here.
Okay, so if I may sum up what you just said, can you go on?
Sorry.
Slides. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so if I may sum up what you just said, if I understood correctly, the title is shorter. We only have 30 characters now across all locals, so I cannot do any kind of update, no creatives, no metadata update in any other language if not all the locals are correctly done, let's say that. Then we have forbidden keywords, as you mentioned, best, free, top, whatever sounds kind of salesy, I'd say in this case, and no calls to action. Like download now, let's try to keep this to a minimum, maybe try to reformulate, but most important thing is to find your value proposition, why your app matters to the user. And finally, no misleading elements, which means no special characters, no graphic elements, and so on. I found a question in there about the company name. It depends now. Google has a kind of whitelist, as far as I understood. And if this special character is part of your brand name, it should not be penalized, but we don't know for sure what exactly Google has on their whitelist. So this is all trial and error and testing. And this refers to two questions that we have here. We will try to find out more on the topic and keep you all posted, of course. But at the moment, it shouldn't be penalized, let's say that, but we don't know what Google has exactly on their whitelist.
Yeah, what I maybe might add here, what you might do for now, right? I mean, we will keep you posted, guys, but try to contact the Google support. And if you really have a company that is registered like that, you might try it that way. If you really get a notification, a warning, so to say, try to reach out to them and explain the situation. That will be my recommendation for now. And I'd also say we will keep you posted on the topic, as it is, I also agree, a very important one.
Okay, so as we have a bit of time, let's see how many other languages, how many other questions came in. there is a question about, I think it's about adding keywords to your reviews replies, if this is bad for ASO. If that's okay for you, Elena, I can take this over. Usually it's good to include keywords in your replies for reviews, as there is the assumption that this plays also into your algorithm. So yes, please try to include it. Of course, the impact is not as the same as when you add it to your metadata fields. The impact is much smaller, but it should have an impact. So it doesn't hurt to include any keywords in there. So please go ahead and try. As we said, ASO is like every other digital optimization, let's say, yeah, a trial and error thing. We always tell our customers to include it. So yes, include them. This would, of course, make sense. What about mentioned keywords in the description? I think you are referring to keywords like best, free, and top, if I am right. And what about the call to action in the description? If Elena, do you want to say something on this topic, please?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, here, as mentioned, so the official announcement was that the long description was basically not mentioned in the beginning. I can just tell you from our experience, we have seen for some apps and games that they received warnings that there was, for example, even we saw one example with new included, like where I have to say, like they add every month new things in there, and they still got the warning that they need to remove it, otherwise the release doesn't get through. Means it was clearly only in the long description and still got the warning. Another example I had with free in the long description, where it was the same situation. I also have to say I had one situation where until now, we did not receive a warning. They did not update it recently, but they still have it included, one of those keywords. I think in that case, it was top game or so. They still have it included, didn't receive warning yet, might come sooner or later, but as said, try to be compliant and stick to the guidelines. And where it is possible, I really would recommend to not use it. Call to actions, the other question here basically goes hand in hand with my answer that I just said. I would really try also focus on what does your app rate. I would at least try to make sure not included in the short description. If you want to have I would say test it, then do it rather in the long description, because it's clearly not allowed anymore in the short description. But as said, also here, I will try to also be compliant and not overdo it.
Okay, so it looks like we went through all the questions. Thank you all. Those are very good questions and good point of discussion. Finally, I want to, we have a goodie for you guys. If you reach out to support@appradar.com, Elena, please show the next slide so that people can see the email that we want to. Yes, exactly. Please, if you reach out to support@appradar.com, we will, or they will give you a free 14 days trial for any plan you might be interested in. So you can try out, as mentioned, the app timeline or other cool features that we have in there. We have a new feature that shows the competitor creatives, right? So you can also see how they do it. So, you know, for conversion rates, you can just see and get inspired by your competitors, let's say that. And yeah, of course, we always like to chat with you. You can always reach out to Elena or to me if you want to get more tips or want to talk about your Google performance or so. We are always there for any questions that you might have. And of course, our services team that you can see on the next slide, they are also always open for questions. And yeah, I'm very, let's say, on top of the game and always testing what could be testable at the moment. Awesome. Since there are no other questions, we will send out the recording in a week or so. Wait, one question came in. Let's see. Will you be sending out the link to recording? Yes, we will. We will send out the recording. And if anything came up in the week before we send it, we will also give you some more insights. Stay tuned for our newsletter and the messages we're sending out to you guys to be yeah, to get your 2022 started and reach all of your goals that you have this year.
Maybe one last thing from my side. We do have 2 awesome, I would say, blog articles about the topic. So if you want to read more, maybe Rebecca, you can also share the links in there.
Yes,
One, I would say, more intro where it sums up all the changes. And then we also did one about first learnings about ASO Impact, where we kind of analyzed what was the impact for those apps that have neglected, that were compliant, and so on. So for further deep dives, so to say.
We will add those links also when we send out the recording, so no worries. And yeah, have an awesome Wednesday and have a good end of the week, and goodbye and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks.
Bye guys.
Bye-bye.